Hello interwebs, I'm Eric.
And I'm Looney.
And welcome to the Looney Turtle. Recently, My Little Pony: A New Generation was released on Netflix, and I gotta say, I loved it. The animation was beautiful, the songs were different,
In a good way.
and it looks like the creators have sculpted an interesting world for us to explore in the season to come. That said, there has been something nagging at me since this movie was announced. How is this Equestria?
Oh, that doesn't matter.
I disagree. The creators of this movie could have created a new world for Generation 5, but they chose to set it in the same world as Generation 4. Doesn't that at least make you question why?
No, because it doesn't matter. I like the characters and the show. You're just trying to ruin it for me with all these pointless questions.
And that's where you're wrong. One of the things that makes or breaks any good story is its world. Amphibia has multiple cities surrounding Wartwood. Owl House has the entirety of the Boiling Isles. Infinity Train has an infinite number of train cars. These characters are having adventures, which is fun to follow, but these stories don't happen in a vacuum. They take place in worlds that in some ways are their own characters. So like any good character, when you decide to include them in your story, it works best when you respect the history that comes along with it. And that's where I'm confused, because again, they didn't have to set this series in the same world as Generation 4, but they did. So why did they strip away seemingly everything that Twilight and her friends created? Not only have the ponies divided based on race, not only are the dragons or the yaks or the sea ponies or the crystal ponies or all of the other races no longer in Equestria, but apparently the entire continent has split in half to accommodate Maritime Bay, the Tree of Harmony, and Canterlot Mountain. Seriously, they're using this many moons time frame to handwave literally every question someone may have. If all of this is true, then there's absolutely no point to connecting these ponies to Generation 4 outside of recognizability. And that's just a cheap marketing tactic. So I'm going to go off of the assumption, the blind hope, that these writers aren't throwing everything in the trash just to tell their own story. So using that assumption, what is Equestria? Well, the ponies in Maritime Bay appear to use it to refer to the place they're in, while the main six seem to use it in reference to the kingdom they reside in. So a possible way to think of Equestria might be Asgard.
Wait, what?
Not literally, but metaphorically. In Thor Ragnarok, Odin and Thor have a small dialogue about who Thor is and how he can face the destruction of Asgard. When faced with the reality that Asgard must fall, Odin tells Thor that
Asgard is not a place. Never was. Asgard is where our people stand.
in that respect, I think that the kingdom of Equestria is where the equestrians, specifically ponies, reside. And as any good fan should know, this isn't the only place equestrians have called home. In Heartswarming Eve, we were able to see a play that explained the founding of Equestria in great detail, and I think that Maritime Bay, Zephyr Heights, and Bridlewood are the tribes we never saw in the original series.
What? But I thought they all moved to found Equestria.
Yes, and to that end, we know that Princess Platinum, Commander Hurricane, and Chancellor Puddinghead decided to move to Equestria to escape the Wendigos. But just because their leaders move, doesn't mean that all of the ponies moved with them. It's actually possible that when the leaders moved to found the kingdom of Equestria, they took the Wendigos with them, in turn making it so the original settlements never had to work together. I mean, the kingdoms knew alicorns controlling the day and night cycle, and big pockets of the world where weather controlled itself. There was no longer an incentive for the original tribes to work together. So it kind of makes sense that they just didn't. So with Equestria developing and thriving with the magic of friendship on their side, the ponies of the original three tribes stayed separate and started relying on technology to the point where they lost any form of magic. And with Equestria so focused on growing and changing, they may have forgotten about the original tribes.
But how do they know?
Alrighty, I think I'm ready to start. So for anyone who's trickled in, welcome. This is just a kind of relaxed live stream to show you a couple of things that I've been working on, primarily 3D printing related, because I recently got a 3D printer and it's been super nice. One of the things that I've actually printed that's here is this controller holder. It's super fun, just kind of practical use. I can display my controller if I so choose. There's a few next to our PlayStation that has them, and that's been nice. But there's more prints over there that I'll show in a minute. Just kind of slow start since right now I'm waiting for people to trickle in. There's Starlit Oat in the chat over on Twitch, and Lono714 says hello, hi, over on YouTube. So it's a simul stream. I tried one the other day, and it seemed to work pretty well. My computer and my internet seem to be able to handle streaming to 2 platforms at once, so I might do this whenever I stream, because the majority of my audience is on YouTube, but there are bound to be some people on Twitch who may want to kind of see what I got out there. So never put all of your apples in one barrel, so to say. So yeah. Yes, 3D printing, Starlet says, dude, 3D printing sounds fun. My old workplace had one. Yes, they are so much fun. For the 5-year anniversary of me being with the company that I currently work for, they gave me 2 3D printers. One that is the Ender 3. It's kind of got a relatively small build place. And then the Ender 5, which is a bit bigger. I can make some pretty neat prints there. I'm kind of just getting into figuring out how to model, so a lot of my current models, very blocky, very to be expected by the books, making sure I'm getting exact measurements, but I'm reaching the point where I'm feeling more comfortable with the software, and as a result I might start experimenting with different kind of models that I would want to do. So this stream, I mainly just wanted to head on over to my crafting station over there to show you kind of the things that I've printed, the process that I've gone through, and also this setup for streaming is something that I spent a little bit of time on. For the longest time, I've had a camera and a microphone over here, but everything over there, which I'll show in a sec again, some people still trickling in. I have a camera, microphone, a screen, so I can kind of still see chat and see what I'm doing on stream. That screen's off currently just because it kind of seemed counterproductive to have OBS and OBS behind me. So, yeah. I currently, Starlight asks, can I ask what you work in? Because getting a 3D printer sounds grand. The first printer that I got, they gave me a lot of PLA. So I have PLA as the material that I print. It's relatively easy to get. It's a kind of a popular filament, or essentially the printer ink for a 3D printer. It's a very popular one. A lot of people use PLA. It's the most common you'll find. ABS is one that a lot of people recommend because that's kind of where 3D printing started with. And yeah, I mainly have been working with PLA as material. On the computer, I've been using Blender to 3D model because it's a free software. I'm familiar with it. I've seen it over the years and kind of dabbled in it. So, actually, funny thing is, I for my online convention that I hosted 2 years ago, LooneyCon, I started 3D modeling one of the mascots. Her name's Olivia Delacroix. She's an otter, and I learned a lot about Blender just through doing that. The idea of using that model kind of fell through. I just wanted to 3D model some stuff because I thought it'd be easier to animate. Didn't really work out, but it definitely taught me a lot about modeling, not necessarily animation because I didn't get to that phase. I was stuck so far in the animation side of things. No, not animation, modeling side of things. But that experience came in handy with getting started with this and figuring out how the printer works, the dimensions that I can go with and all that. I feel like I'm getting more confident with the sizing and scaling, so I'm going to probably start prioritizing more style projects, because if I have the scale, if I can check the scale, make sure that's good, we're good. That's squared away. I can export it from Blender, get it into the printer and print it out, but it's style that's going to need a little bit of work, because right now I have a bunch of squares, essentially. Squares and cylinders, simple shapes put together. But I can definitely do more with that. Have you worked with Tinkercad? I tried using it one time to 3D print a small travel size Connect 4 game. I've heard of CAD. I haven't really experimented with that one. The reason that Blender kind of pops out to me is because it's adjacent to what I've already got experience in. And that's honestly the way that a lot of creators should go about finding new softwares that they want to mess around with. Is it adjacent to something you already have experience in? Because that kind of helps in making it easier to pick up. Like the interface of Blender it takes a minute to get used to, but it can definitely help me when it comes to producing videos and giving me small little things I could do with that. So it's kind of a, ooh, I can do this thing in addition to what I'm already doing, as opposed to CAD, which it is a 3D modeling software, but that's all I really know about it. I can get things ready for a CNC machine. I can get things ready to make products, but it doesn't really seem like much of a video production. It can really help me in that regard. So I'm kind of, I feel like Blender was the more worthwhile program to invest learning and understanding, so that I could also use it for videos. Like if I wanted to make a 3D animation with something that I modeled, then I could do that, and I could also print it. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. Yeah. So anyways, I haven't really advertised this stream as much. It's kind of a first time, so I wasn't really expecting a huge audience for this, which is good. Cause yeah, I like to be able to see the chat, talk with people, and not have like 500 messages scrolling on by. So that's going to be a nice atmosphere. Right now we're listening to the amazing tunes of Lo-Fi Girl. So if you're curious of that, what you've been hearing in the background, hopefully, like I can hear it in the monitor, so you should be able to hear her and also hear me pretty well. And by hear her, I mean hear the music that's played, because there's no voice in Lo-Fi Girl. It's a really nice music produced by them. It's kind of a collaborative effort, and they just play 24-hour music. And it's been going since July 12th of 2022, so they've been doing good. Right now, the live stream for them, I don't see a view number. Oh, 27,854, so there. People know about Lo-Fi Girl. Yeah, I guess without further ado, I'll head over to my crafting station, which is what I'm going to call it, because I'm a Minecraft nerd. And kind of get started showing you guys what I've made so far. So yeah, let's get over there. Crafting station. Boop. Also, I'm sorry for the change in audio quality. Right now, I am using my Samsung CO1U. This is the microphone that I started YouTube with. I still have it, and I'm kind of holding on to it. So yeah, there's that. And it's not nearly as good as the Q9U, which I was just using over there. But it's still a pretty good mic. You can hear me and understand me, and it's great. So anyways, when I started 3D printing, one of the first things, it shouldn't be auto-focusing. Hold on, let me fix that. Okay, now it shouldn't be doing that, which is good. Because having it focus and focus and focus and focus is just kind of annoying, you know? Anyways, so, if anything comes up, you guys want a question, you're more than welcome to pop up on the chat. I still have a view of it right over here, so I can see what's going on both YouTube and Twitch, because this is a simultaneous stream. So one of the first things that I printed was this little guy here. Let me get a little bit of a zoom in for you. Bloop, bloop, button. No, that was the preview. This is it. Okay. This little guy, very small, gotta zoom in a bit, is a pig, and this is the first thing that I printed. I kind of messed around a little bit with the proportions, seeing what I could do, kind of the sensitivity of the material, what sanding it does, and I've definitely learned a lot with this. I've also, of course, painted it, you know, it's pink, and I've definitely learned a lot with the nose. I painted over it with acrylic, both the eyes and the nose, which were holes when it was printed. So then I put acrylic paint over it, and it kind of covered those holes, so I tried to pop them out again. The nose did not survive, so there was that. And then I also did a couple of tests to try and figure out like how well does this material cut with an X-Acto knife, because this used to be a lot thinner of a slice. It printed hollow, which was also really neat, just to see just its ability to do that. And yeah, I cut that a little bit wider just to kind of get a feel for cutting PLA printed materials, printed models with an X-Acto knife, and the same kind of a little bit here because the nose was already ruined. I also sanded it, get a feel for what the different parts of my I got a bunch of files that I use, and kind of saw the texture that they create, the smoothness that I can get from a 3D print, which I'm kind of surprised at how smooth these can get, and also a little bit of overspill of the I don't know if you can see it on camera, but like I basically left a couple droplets of acrylic on this part, and I can see that it dried, and the puddle is still there physically. And I also just painted the rest of it with layers, see how that goes. So that's been my first 3D print. It went pretty well. I like the pig. So then I moved on to a dog. This little guy here, very nice print. I was surprised that it was able to be this smooth, as well as like all of the. It's mainly the smoothness that surprised me, because this is printed on. There's some 3D printers that do a glass bed like the Ender 5. This one was printed on the Ender 3, so it had to print on a raft, and I'm just kind of surprised at how smooth the overall texture of this one ended up being, and just kind of how it's like I'm holding a 3D modeled cartoon character. It's very, very interesting. I kind of liked it. So there was that. This was the second print. The third print I had a couple of problems with. Hold on one sec. Is it zooming out? Okay. I had to print it 3 times. So with this one, the issue that came up was it ran out of filament. So it couldn't print more. The machine kept going. But the part itself stopped getting printed because it didn't have any more plastic. It just existed, basically. It was sitting on the bed. This one had a similar issue, but it became detached from the bed. Like the bottom just, it's printing, and whoop, it's off. It moved, and then I got the infamous 3D printing stringing, which wasn't too nice, but some prints will do that. Got to work on your bed leveling and all of that. So those were a wash, but they're definitely a learning experience. I keep them as a reminder to be careful with your bed leveling, be careful with making sure that the printer is ready to print. Also for Queen Day and Night, hello. Over on YouTube, they said hello, so hello to you. This is the final print, finally worked out. It was great. Only issue with it is that across the nose of the cat, there's like voids, and I didn't really figure out why that was. I thought maybe it's the filament catching, but no, the filament was perfectly fine, so there wasn't really an explanation for why that line happened, and then it just kind of stopped existing in my future prints, so I'm like, that's a wash. Okay. Something that I actually printed yesterday is I want to make a bottle holder, because my brother has a bunch of water bottles that he likes to get filled, and this was just kind of a test to make sure that I got the accurate dimensions to it, so this ended up pretty good. I'm kind of happy with it. Another thing that I wanted to kind of talk about, show off during this stream is my button holder. It's something, my first real 3D project that I made specifically to have and use, and maybe even sell to others. It's just a button holder. And the thing that it's meant to do is, one, connect to other button holders. So I can just take this, connect it together, and blammo, I've got two button holders in a relatively sturdy display. So there we go with that. And the way that it holds buttons is something that I had to experiment a bit with. There's these, here's a sample button. You just simply push this little piece out and then take the button itself, angle it to the camera, and it slides on there and stays centered of the button holder. There's a couple of little prongs back here to keep it at the level that you left it at. But overall, yeah, it was just like the idea of having multiple buttons that you can put in nice little displays and expand it and have all the buttons you want, and you can go in any direction that you want. Just simply, pop them off, connect them like Legos, but to get to this point took a lot of trial and error. Like, oh my goodness, let me show you the trial and error. To start out with this, all of that is practice and figuring out how to 3D model, how to print. My favorite princess from Mario, I don't really have one, is a question. Queen Day and Night asks, so who's my favorite princess in Mario? I don't really have one. But anyways, with the button holder, I started out by making a bunch of cylinders. You can vaguely see them on here. Maybe even closer. But there's a bunch of cylinders, and they're hollow. So there we go. Yeah, they're hollow, so the needle of the button can fit through it. And the idea of this was that you would stick the buttons onto that, and then have it on the button display. I decided that was kind of too. It required me to have too many parts as part of the button holder, so I decided to do a different design. But for the first couple of them, it's a full cylinder that you put the needle through, and you'd have to do that. And then I kind of decided on, will I go with this size, and printed this off to get, one, the thickness of the material, how flimsy or how strong it is. This ended up being a little too small for me. I didn't like it. So I made another one, and I realized also with this one it was kind of hard to Oh, sorry, I get distracted by the chat periodically. I kind of didn't like the way in which this gets put on, because it's kind of hard to put buttons on this little prong that I have. Ugh, giving contrast there. This little prong, kind of hard to get the button on there, so I went back to the drawing board and made this, which is 2 parts. This one slots into here nicely. So the idea was that you would be able to put the button through the hole on this cylinder. Yeah. And then put this in here so that it would be the button holder with something holding your button. As well as it would double to being a button standy, where you'd put this, wedge it in here, and it would just hold the button up. This idea didn't work out too well, because for one, the piece itself falls right out. Another disadvantage is I didn't quite have a way to properly keep the stand element staying up and staying sturdy. This is very poorly wedged, as you can see. But the idea was there, and I might revisit this for individual button stands. But the current design is more of a expandable, make your buttons expandable. But I might revisit this idea. It was pretty neat. And also, hello, Fluttercriz. I fumble over names when I don't say them aloud. And yes, it's meant to be a nice, handy button holder. So there's that. And also, yes, Turtle 5 to Queen Day and Night. So, yeah, and also welcome Gabriel Nivea. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. Yeah, so that was the second design, kind of a bit of a jump. I made it bigger so that I could actually have the button on there. If I'll grab this real quick, I'll show you that it's not, it's kind of the exact dimensions of the button, and isn't really a display. It doesn't give it any room to breathe. So I tried this scaling and I liked it. It's kind of a nice amount of space for the button, lets it breathe and that kind of thing. So that's why I ended up going with this kind of setup. And you'll also notice on the side, the pin isn't centered, so this isn't centered. But this design has its flaws. So I went with another design. This one, I tried the idea of kind of designing it so that there's a wedge, and this basically nestles into a wedge. It's at a triangular angle, and it'll kind of wedge into this, so it has a little friction there. And that actually made it so it stays in a lot better than with this design. You just turn them. Definitely a better design element, but still had the issue of having to print 2 parts, and also it's not very secure because realistically someone could just pull the button and take it. So back to the drawing board. How do I make something that is more secure? Well, what if I slot it in? And so I made this version, which has a handy little piece that slots in, and it works. Only downside is, again, security, because for one, if you it's thin enough so that if you flex it a little, it pops out. And this, if you end up pulling it, you grab the button, you can pull it, and it pops right out. So again, I have to print 2 parts, and another disadvantage is that I have to make it secure. How do I achieve those 2 goals? Well, that is where these come in. I decided to try and print it as one part. Only issue, it printed it as one solid part. And it turns out it wasn't because of the tolerances, because I'd done a tolerance test and figured out kind of the distance I could keep these edges apart from the model itself. But, yeah, I instead opted to give it way too much of a tolerance because, the issue with this one, the reason that it printed it as a solid object despite having the proper tolerance, was because one of the walls in the 3D modeling software wasn't there. So it thought, oh, this whole bottom layer is a solid object, and it printed it as such. Very disappointing. But once I fixed that, I had already kind of messed with the tolerances way too much, and ended up with, one, a very, very thin and flimsy piece that moves around, as well as way too large a gap. So I took this one and realized it isn't really handy to have this hole. It's hard to get the button needle threaded through that hole to display the button. And also, some buttons don't have this in the exact same spot. So what is center for one button isn't center to another one. Also, thank you for the raid, Fluttercrits. A tiny raid, but due to no longer being able to host. Ah, darn. Thank you for the raid. That's over on Twitch. And then over on YouTube, I've got Queen Day and Night asking, why did I make a turtle OC? I've answered this a couple of times, but the main answer is I had been doing YouTube videos for a while, and I wanted to come up with a name that I'd be happy using 5-10 years down the line. And I brainstormed a couple of ideas. I didn't really have many, but I knew that I liked cartoons. Cartoony, toony, loony what? And I had a fish tank at the time, and inside of it was, guppy. Loony guppy? No. Loony goldfish? No. Loony plecostomus? No, that's a mouthful. So there was a little turtle figurine in there, and that's kind of where it clicked. I was like, Looney Turtle. Yeah, that's what I'll go with. So I wrote it down, and that kind of ended up being the name. So I picked a turtle OC because when I made my channel, I wasn't in the pony fandom. I wanted a 10 years down the line name, and the Looney Turtle ended up being the name. So there's that. Anyways, this has a really big gap. Wanted to get rid of that. So my next design, which is this one. Okay. I'm just trying to keep track of these. This one also added a couple of bumps here. So this is the beginnings of what ended up being the ridge that you just slot your button into instead of the thread the needle type of approach that I was doing. And even with this one, I realized that the threaded parts were a little too long to really help with the buttons. Like these little slots were too long in this direction. So I made those thinner in the next one. And I eventually reached a point where I was like, okay, this is it. This is the way that I want the middle to go. How do I work about actually connecting them? And I tried dovetails, which is a kind of, think of it like a puzzle piece. It works until it doesn't. This kind of connection method usually works best for bigger items. It would be nice if these could just be puzzle pieces, but there's not enough material. I'm not making it thick enough to justify dovetails and make dovetails work. But if I make a bigger thing, these definitely are an option. This could definitely hold something together a lot better if it was thicker. So that was that. And then I wanted to revisit this idea where it slots in. How do I do that to connect the different panels? So I drafted this up, which has these two on this side, and it's the same two over here, but these ones are very tiny, very teeny tiny, itty bitty. And the idea was that I'd slot this in part way. There we go. And then I'd put this remaining part into the next one. But the reason that I didn't end up going with this one is because it has the same issue as this one. There's too many parts to print. So instead, I went back to the drawing board and thought, okay, this isn't going to work. How do I make it as one continuous piece? And so I started experimenting with that concept, and that's where all of these come into the mix. I thought, okay, what if I did a Lego thing? And it didn't work out. So these two pieces were slotted together. And the idea of these are the same as this later design. Right here? Yeah. The same as this one, where we've got essentially the Lego brick and the holes of the Lego brick, and they slot together. Only problem with this one is they ended up being way too small and broke off. I put them together once, and then all of them are broken off. Very unfortunate. I was really disappointed when that happened, but it taught me that, one, I had very small cylinders. I need to make them bigger. And two, if there's not enough infill or not enough material there, they'll just break right off. Which led me to making these two, which do the same concept but bigger. And they worked pretty well. This one wasn't quite slotting as perfectly as I'd like, and I found out it's because the reason that Legos work so well is because there's friction. With these ones, it's just I created no friction because these cylinders here are a little smaller than these cylinders here, and so they just kind of slide past each other. And seeing how Legos create friction by pushing two cylinders together, essentially, I tried that with mine. Push two cylinders closer together. So some of these are closer than others, and it just slots right in and clicks. You hear that click, and you know that it stuck together. Now, I printed this at the same time that I printed these tests. So when this one failed, I moved on to those. But while I was testing these, I also printed a couple of others where I try the dovetails again, but this time with it being a solid side and then a side that I can slot the dovetail into. That didn't work out. Then I also tried one that was closer together, and it worked. Just, it still got that maneuverability that I didn't quite like. And so these ones I classed as probably shouldn't go with. These are the winners of that, so let's kind of iterate with that. But that's kind of where that went. And then I decided, okay, now I got to do it with the plate. Only issue, this one's goes that way too far, so they can't cleanly fit together. So I had to account for that in printing. Then when I did, it wasn't clicking as well. Why is it not click? Oh, I forgot the friction thing. Right. So then I did the friction. I want to make sure these are the right. Yeah. So I did the friction thing, and it stuck a lot better. And I made another one just trying a little bit more friction, make it just a little bit stronger. And that worked pretty well. I liked that result. And the benefit to this design is now which one's going to be top, which one's going to be bottom. Because, you know, I have to print it flat. So which one am I willing to sacrifice a little quality on just to make it print better? And I decided that I was going to print this side flat on the print bed, so like this, and I'd print this one like this. So the quality on this part will be sacrificed a little bit in favor of this side. Generally with 3D printing, what you want to do is have the smoothest, flattest side be the part that's on overhang, but I wasn't able to do that. I didn't think of that, but in the end, I'm happy with the final result that I ended up with. And this ended up being the final design, where I added the Lego pieces, and it's still printed. It's printed flat like this, so that the whole side is on the build plate, and then this one has to have a couple layers of overfill here, just so that the overhang can be there. And it sacrifices a little bit of quality there, but overall they connect very well, expand very well, and I'm happy with this design, because I feel that it could be useful as a button display for people, and in the event that they want an upgrade, I might, like, if I'm able to sell enough of these, I can look into making a version 2.0, but I need to know that they're worth investing time and money into, because there's a possibility, even at this point, with all of this mess, there's a possibility that this was a complete and total waste of time. All of this process was potentially a complete and total waste of time. So I want to start selling some of them to see if there are vendors out there that would want to display their buttons like this, if there are any ideas that they'd want me to try in making more of these. And once I get enough information in that regard, I can then go back to the drawing board and make a button holder 2.0. So yeah, there's that. In the comments on YouTube, Queen Day and Night asks, do I voice Looney the Turtle? Yes, I do.
Looney's voice is pretty fun to do.
But yeah, I also do other voices. There's a project that I sent voice lines in for, and I'll hopefully be sharing that on my socials once it's out. I'm just basically doing a narrator, and it's a fun adventure with some guy. So yeah, this has been my first real project into 3D printing, as well as some of my first initial prints that came with the 3D printing software. And yeah, anybody in the comments have questions or want to talk about something? Oh, also, I got this after making all of this. And it's been instrumental in a couple of personal projects that I decided to start working on. My Ender 5 is actually having some issues where parts will just break off. With this particular one, it was a test, so I'm not heartbroken over it breaking, but for the final piece, I kind of want to figure out how to make it so it doesn't break parts off like this. Yeah. I was asked a question by my girlfriend. Are you going to throw away all of the scraps that didn't work, or are you going to do something else with them? For these, they're kind of souvenirs, part of the learning process that I can actually look back onto, see what worked, what didn't work, revisit potential ideas, because I think, especially with this one, the ability to slot something in like that, I might use that in another design, maybe even as a final piece, as opposed to this was printed like this, where it's two separate pieces. But I might might revisit this idea and print it as one solid thing and use that concept. Like, all of these individually were a learning experience to some extent, and so I'll likely keep them stored away in a bin so that I can like look back at them and be like, oh yeah, I tried this with that. How did that work out? How did that feel? And I even have the 3D models still on my computer, so I can even go to the software and be like, what size was that? That's perfect for something that I'm working on right now. So with all the failures, I'll probably revisit them, and I have a box of scraps from failed prints and other things that are just sitting in the room with my 3D printers, and I might recycle that, but I haven't quite gotten enough filament to justify investing in filament recycling stuff, because there's actually a lot that goes into recycling it, and you can do it at home. It's the DIY stuff, where you shred up all of this to a very fine powder that's then melted into a new filament that you can then use for other projects. But again, I don't currently have enough filament scrap to really justify that. So for now, it'll just sit in a box. And for these, they'll sit in a more organized-ish box. It's still a box of, all this, that I can call upon to decide, well, this idea didn't work out. This was a garbage piece, but there is something to learn from failure, and things that you can try that didn't work out before. Again, especially with this one, like this concept, this ability to do a wedged piece is something worth revisiting. And I have the 3D model that I could look at and be like, okay, so what's the measurement on this and this and this, and like feeling this, it's pretty good for like actually slotting something in. It's just not the best one if the board it's on is flimsy, and if the piece itself is flimsy. So kind of gotta reach a balance between those. So yeah, all the stuffs. But that's kind of been my foray into 3D printing. I might keep the video up on YouTube, or I might just re-upload it to my second channel, TheLooneyTurtle. But the Twitch video on demand will still be available. And yeah, this has been my first foray into showing crafts on a live stream. I'm gonna go switch back to my main computer and probably end out the stream pretty soon. So yeah. Hi, this microphone. I prefer this microphone. Do I love Tank the Tortoise? His episode was kind of interesting, but he's not really a character that I've got tons of merch of. I've just got some gifts people have given me, like a badge of Tank or stuff like that. So I don't hate the character, but he's not like one that I go out of my way to show off. And yeah, so copper chip plushie. Yes, I have one of those. All the stuffed animals. So yes. Oh, actually, I'll show it on stream. Whoa. Since I've also got one of the limited runs, or I think one of the last ones that they were selling at the time, of Bonita. The lovely, lovely Bonita. Even got her wheelchair accessory, which kind of runs up the price of it, as well as her necklace, which is kind of runs up the price of it. So overall, really love this one. And then there's Copper Chip, of course. Lovely limited runs of them. Because I think they've gone through a couple of different designs with those characters. So, and then since I'm showing stuffed animals, there's also Looney.
Hello, turtle.
I got all the stuffed animals for display. And then for anybody who's curious or probably seen it and been like, is that? I think that is it? That's Toothless from How to Train Your Dragon. So I got that from Anime Bonsai Utah, which I'll be going to this year, along with BabsCon, probably Everfree, Salt Lake Fan X, and Anthro Weekend Utah. So fun conventions to go to. I recommend others do the same because they're pretty fun events that I've been to. I kind of like the more low scale, smaller scale, personable ones like Anthro Weekend, Anime Bonsai, and BabsCon. I'm actually working with BabsCon this year as their head of theme, so there's that. Yeah, overall enjoy the things that go along there. Boss Minecrafter says they just subbed, so thank you. Over on YouTube they subbed. And yes. Let's go to... I need to add Toothless to my plushie stash. I mean, can you fit Toothless with your plushie stash, Capatina? And then there, Flutter Chris says, I have a mighty need for a Bonita plushie. I don't know if they still have them, but yeah, it's a nice plush. Very, again, like lots of accessories. They've got this and this just runs up the price of having it because it's unconventional items for one, and unconventional plush accessories. So yeah, you absolute don't test me. I absolutely can. I'll make the biggest mountain of plushies you don't even know. Yeah. So yeah, I think with that said, I've got to go and get ready for class tonight because I gotta go to class. But hopefully I'll do more of these streams. I hope you guys had fun. I might do some gaming streams, just given that this setup's always been kind of ready for gaming. I also, have a PlayStation controller that I can use for different games. There's one that I've been playing recently called Baba Is You. It's a coding game, kind of interesting. So, yeah, there's that. And then there's other games I could play. So, anyways, with all that said, I'll see all of you in the next one.